Hello, good evening. Welcome. My name is Kwabena. I want to share with you today what I call African dilemma, other forms of domination. African dilemma, other forms of domination. About uh, about 7, 8 years ago, I was watching TV. I think it was a foreign channel, and I saw this gentleman. He was a Christian. It was a Christian channel that I was watching, and the man was saying that he's a missionary, and he specifically mentioned Ghana, and that he ever lived in Ghana for a while, and he professed that majority of the the young people would or the people that he talked to, majority of them would prefer that Africa or Ghana was still under colonization. And then he went forward to say that he thinks that Africa will never develop, and maybe until Jesus comes. So, as an African, and I think that I'm a bit passionate about Africa. So I actually wrote to the channel and asked them how could they allow somebody to make such a comment without asking any question, that majority of Africans would still want to have um, would still want to have the white man rule us, and the only fair chance that we have is for Christ to come. So there's no chance that Africa will ever develop. That was his assertion. So I wrote to them, and I sent them an email, and they sent the email to the man. So the man replied that no, it was a program that he was making some comment, and that's why he felt. So you think that we are never going to get it right? We're never going to be wise? But thinking forward, I think that is not only the foreigner or the white man who has that kind of thinking. Majority of Africans still believe that, and some of us continue to ask questions. I've heard a lot of people say that the obvious thing is that Africa's challenge is leadership. So if Africa gets leadership right, then Africa will develop. Then I ask them, people are asking those kind of questions, and some people also say that why do you continue to blame people who came here, worked here for some years, they have gone, now we are independent, why can't we take care of our situation? I think that just every country, every citizens of another country continue to ask questions, whether they are developed or they are not developed, because there's not going to be a perfect state, a perfect country, perfect people anywhere in this world. So it's legitimate for people to ask questions. My part is that the questions that we ask, do we get the answers, or we just ask them out of frustration? I think that majority of us are still passionate, hopeful of our development and of our progress, of our success as Africans, whether it's Ghana, whether it's any other country in Africa. We all, the young men, we all constantly ask questions. We are passionate about the politics. We are passionate about the things that we think it should be done for us to develop. Now, I think there have been a lot of general assertions on us, which I think is just a tape of the obvious, that Africa's challenge is leadership. But something is more responsible for the leadership than the leadership itself, because if other people, we think that the other people are very much appropriate with leadership, then what is so wrong with us that we don't have we still struggling to have the leadership right? So if it's so true that Africa's challenge is leadership, maybe they are right. I don't know. There's not one solution to a complex situation. People can have bits and pieces of everything. I don't think there's one bit of that complex question why we still trying to develop, and it's a bit slow, and a lot of people are not patient. I think that it's just a limited data, and we try to not put things in the context of the African situation. And when you try to put things in context, people think that you are just making excuses, or you are just trying to blame somebody for the complexities of African situation. So the African dilemma is what I'm talking of, and the other forms of domination. So we continue to hear questions of Africa and why we have not developed as quickly as the rest of the world. Sometimes when you are watching TV, you see that when they are giving nice examples, they talk of Asia, they talk of India, China, they talk of Brazil, but you never hear of Africa. And then when they are giving bad example, weak example, poor example, they mention any country in Africa. They will mention any country, Nigeria, Ghana, they will mention Zimbabwe. And we continue to watch some of these guys, especially, some of them even make it fun. And you watch it, and as an African, how do you feel? How do you feel that when they are talking nice things and they happen to give one example which is bad, they just mention your people? But when they talk about progress, economic progress and technology, they don't mention us. It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma. It's another form of domination. It may appear as if it's obvious, but I don't think we have been that foolish as a people. We may have underestimated what it would take us for us to get ourselves out of some of this entanglement, and we don't intend to make excuses for them, but proper appreciation of where we have come from and where we are going will make you to be a bit at peace with yourself as an African. Because I think if you're an African in this world and you're thinking and you're looking for solutions beyond yourself, one of the things that you would want to solve would not just be your personal discovery as an African, your personal aspirations as African, but then other misinformations that they have given us as Africans, and how you put them into perspective. I think that the earlier you get some of those things rightly thought out and understood, the better for you to also even understand your own personal situation as an African. And so every day I'll talk to friends. Those who are much interested in development, in politics, in things that concern Africa. Almost all the time, a conversation somewhere, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on WhatsApp, whether it's on phone, whether it's in person, there is always some kind of conversation that comes up, and you hear some of them, denigrating Africans, almost all the time. Not only from the foreigner or from the other people, but also from a lot of our own people. The kind of things that we put out without knowing that we are putting ourselves under domination. So I'm talking about this. This is according to my own conviction. It doesn't have to be absolute. Just as people have the right to say what they think, I think I also have some bit of right to say what I think. It doesn't have to be appropriate, but at least it will help some people. It has helped me to also have some kind of peace and some kind of understanding and patience that it's not that we have a situation that can never change. I think that our situation can improve, can change. We need more effort, we need more better understanding, and then we need a lot of things to change. And so most of the Africans that we have, the education that we have had, majority of Africans, almost all have their own language. And then somebody else came to colonize us. So if they send an African to school, he has his mother language, and then somebody else, if the person is a Ghanaian and is schooling in Ghana, you go to school, they have to teach you in another language. If you're coming from the town that I grew up in, you were speaking Twi, Asante Twi, and then you happen to go to school, they have to teach you in English to formalize you. They have to teach you in English to formalize you. Now, it's not just about the English, but the English also represents something. It has a history, it has a culture, it has a domination. They have some facts that they come, with them teaching us. So by the time that they send the African to school, they have to improve his language or change his language. And they start to give him information about some culture somewhere. They start to teach you European history. They start to teach you slavery and colonization, they start to complicate your life for you as an African. So the first day you start to go to school, now they have to teach you English. Or if you schooled in, say, Cote d'Ivoire, they have to teach you in French. That is an identity crisis right there. Why? Because this man was speaking Twi, was speaking another language. Now you move him to school. If I were to be an Englishman and I just started to school, when I go to school, I'm going to learn the same language that my parents were speaking to me. And possibly I'm also going to learn the same culture, the same history of my ancestors, the same kind of things. I can relate to a lot of the heroes in those. Now, if they send the African to school, you're going to hear people who never represented you. They are saying that they are the scientists, they are the doctors, they are the the people who have discovered everything. Now, when you had not gone to school, they gave you stories, Anansi stories and things that had no name of William or Frank or Gorgesbeck or things like that. Now they send you to school, they tell you all these heroes, and none of them represent the kind of cultural context or connotation that you're coming from. I think that is a major shift that we have seriously overlooked. And so when they go from the primary school to the secondary school to the university, in order for them to polish the African, for him to become a standardized person, they have taken him out of his root, of his identity, of his heritage. And so a large number of us would have to be moved to a stage where we go to school, we are educated in terms to read and write, to do mathematics, but the content is also very much Western or European. So now, by the time that you are through with the school, you look polished. You look suit, tie, speak proper English, and they say that you're standardized, you're being educated. If you were a British man, if you're an American, and you didn't even go to school, you could easily communicate in that culture. Easily communicate. If you happen to read and write, you don't have to get a degree to start anything that you want to start. In our kind of context, it is a bit hard for people who can read and write. People can hardly read and write in the language of commerce, in the so-called language, official language. I don't know if you have official language, but at least the English that we speak. If I was never sent to school, it would be hard for me to write the English or to read in English. Now, do you know how much influence that has on the people who never stepped in the classroom? There's a perpetual fight with confidence and identity. And a lot of us, those maybe now we have people who are going to school, but even that, when they are finished to school, when they have gone through the school, we just happen to produce engineers, doctors, judges, lawyers, teachers, whose content and cultural connotation in terms of the information that they have given them to become the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, is more an alien. It's a foreign thing to the base of his start. The way he started to be developed as a human being. By the time that he goes to school, he cannot relate to that thing anymore. He seems to even trivialize and separate himself from that thing which he was born in, the culture that he was born in. So now he cannot even speak the Twi in his own school. I remember when we were in school, they wrote that don't speak vernacular. If you speak vernacular, which is Twi, then they will punish you. Do you see the implication that it had on us? It started to break us out of our confidence, out of our identity. We may deny it, we may say that is an excuse. But if I was in another country that I started to learn the English from ground, maybe I'm in Germany, I'm a German. I'm born in a home. Before I'm sent to school, I'm studying the same language as they will use in school, the same culture. By the time that I finish primary 6 or JSS, I can still do a lot of things on my own without necessarily going for degree or going for master's or PhD. There's a lot that they can do at that level. Now here, there's a bit of struggle if they have never gone to school. My mate that I finished JSS with, who in a village school who cannot speak the right English and cannot write, how many of them were able to develop the confidence to pursue their own lives beyond the cultural setting? They will look at themselves to say that, I didn't go to school. I didn't have the opportunity to go to school. So that itself is enough excuse for them not to become anything. It's a dilemma. Now, there are other parts of our culture where they start to, if you go to Kumasi, for instance, a lot of things are done in Chi, which I think is very good. But then there's also a cap on it. How do they also modernize on what they have? If somebody grew up in Accra, they seem to be a bit more westernized. This is my observation. It may be wrong. In my observation, if you bring up if you grew up in Accra and they were speaking English to you, you tend to be a bit more of the culture than if you grew up in the other regions. So if you grew up in Kumasi, for instance, you will speak the Twi, you'll be more into the culture. You go to the funeral, you go to the gathering, you speak the language. You go to church, they speak it. You go to school, they speak it. I remember in Opokwari we were speaking Twi, and I think it was a good thing. Now, that also establishes some kind of identity in you. That's why they say that those who grew up in that region are a bit more cocky. It's not because they are cocky or they are proud. I think it's because of the culture. So they are growing up with some indigenous identity. Now, how do they also lift it up to the so-called standard? It's difficult because they have the foundation, but how do they build on that kind of identity? And the other ones who probably were brought up in Accra, the foundation is shaky, because they pride themselves with the English, with the university that they have gone to, with the fact that they can speak proper English. In that case, the identity is also weak because the content is more of European content, so to say. Now, the Europeans don't see you as European; they still see you as an African. So, how do you blend the two? How do you blend the two? One of the easiest things to do if you want to control anybody is just control their money, control their time, control their resources, control the information that comes to them. And so if you look well, by the time that you finish this so-called degree that they give us, and you finish the other masters or something, it has become now, I think that if I was looking at LinkedIn the other time and I saw a lot of my friends, MSc in this, PhD in this, MSc in this, PhD in this. Africans are very much infatuated with education. We are caught up. It's almost like a colonization system now, where there's an insatiable need for us to get education, or degrees now. If you look at Africans. So we never satisfy with it. It's part of colonization. It's actually domination now, because the essence of the education should be for us to work out the problems, solve the problems, the challenges that we have. But now it's a pattern now. So by the time that if I didn't have the ground identity from the basis, and I was given just the degree, the PhD, the masters, by the time I finished that, 80% of the content is European. Or is Western. So the way I interpret issues now is more Western. How do we separate technology from the West? How do you separate the Western culture from education? It's almost impossible. A lot of us don't even know. And so they tell us that, Africa's problem is leadership. It's not necessarily leadership, because the leader is made by something. What is that thing? What process did the leader go through? What foundation did he have? What foundation? Who trained him? Could he relate to his heritage and his identity? Or that thing was taken from him and it was filled with something else? So he is there as a leader. He represents you. He probably even speaks the language. But it is hard for him to know the problem and how to relate to it. And so I think that now, for you to liberate these Africans, it's difficult. It's difficult because it has always, you look at it, the education is almost now separate from productivity. We only follow them to get jobs. The people who did not have this kind of education, who didn't go to school at all, who cannot read the English, I think that they are the best who could come up with ideas to change the continent than those that we have sent to school. Because by the time that you finish this Western education, by the time that you finish this PhD, and all this, the best you become is a manager. The best you become is a manager. Unless you yourself, individually, self-educated so much that you acquired knowledge which could match the Western content. You become a manager. Just a manager. It will be so much difficult for you to think of starting anything to change anything in Africa. It becomes very difficult because of the content. Because of the content. It becomes so much difficult. So our problems, you can see our problems are where? Our problems are with the population increase. Where are our problems? The food, the clothes, the shelter, the water, the electricity, the data, the communication, the transport systems, all the things that civilizations or people have to have. Now look at these things and tell us how many of them are being produced by the people that we sent to college, the people that we gave them the so-called education, which 80% is different content. So we cannot even relate with the reality on the ground. Now the other people who didn't go to school, who cannot speak the English, who cannot speak the whatever education or language that they taught you in, if they taught you in Cote d'Ivoire, it's probably French, they also don't have the confidence. They may be able to relate to the challenges because that identity may be there, I think. But those of us who went through the Western kind of education with very little content here, there's no foundation. And that's why it's very difficult for us to originally create something, become a trailblazer, become productive without waiting for somebody to help you. It is so clear that majority of these guys that we have sent to school, excuse me to say, we are always waiting for somebody to help us because that was the kind of education they have given us. That's the kind of education that they have given us. It's miserable. It's a dilemma. It's tough, but that's what they have given us. And it has also become some form of domination. I think so. I think that the education now, the certificates, the degrees, is also being used to dominate us. So it's constant test. By the time you finish your first degree, go and get a second degree. By the time you finish second degree, go and get PhD. By the time you finish PhD, you can't do anything by yourself. You can't start anything by yourself. You just have to wait for somebody to start. That's why majority, you look at our parliament. Do you know how many PhD holders are there? Because by the time you finish this kind of education, you always want the predictable one. It has to be predicted. It has to be, or you won't take it. Because all your confidence would have been taken away from you. All your identity would have been taken away from you. By the time that you finish this kind of, all this theory that they give us. And so the African is in constant challenge, constant complexity of, do I go with my heritage? Or do I leave my heritage behind and capture this so-called standardized or word standard, the way they talk, international standard, whatever standard. The same international standard, when they mention Africa, they never mention anything good. Even if when you are doing well in something, their thought on us is still very backward people. And so you left the foundation, you captured this, and now you cannot use it to help the people. And that's a very complex situation, especially for those who still think that they want to do something for Africa. So if you were brought up in a village, you don't have this kind of so-called international standard. You don't have it. So that's why you can see that majority of the so-called entrepreneurs that we have, majority of them didn't go through the education. Majority of them didn't go through. So they have very basic one, and that also it has a limiting factor, because it gets to a point their confidence is also not there, because they also believe that they need the so-called education, which is always in English. And they cannot write the English, they cannot read the English, they cannot even do the maths well. So they start an idea, they stay with it, worked, but at a certain point, they also become that much afraid to even step out. So there's a big difference between those who are trying to do something, original idea that nobody started, they themselves started, and those who cannot do something because of the content that they have been given. And so a lot of these guys, we have just given them a lot of information, but they cannot do anything. That's why they write a lot of report. They go for European Union to fund it for them. They become think tanks. It's not by chance that they become think tanks. It's the content. It's the content. It's the content. If you look at the Asians, the Chinese especially, the guy has whatever school, but he carried some bit of identity with him. He was schooled in his language. He's very comfortable as a degree holder to be at a small place to produce something with what he knows. He's very much comfortable. He's not in competition with another person. He's very much comfortable to just organize some, maybe he's just printing business cards, and he's very comfortable. He does it very well at that stage, and he has a lot of education. Or he's just producing something. You know, they have all kind of small industries that they are producing, and a lot of them have gone to school. They're very confident. They were schooled in their language. They taught them their heritage. They taught them their history. They are not so much, yes, they can copy and everything, but they are not so much in haste to become another person as a standard, so to say. They think that they can create whatever tool, whatever gadget that they can create. Once they can solve a need at a particular point, that is the standard that they believe in. At least it's solving a problem. Now, if you compare his colleague from the continent, he went to school without his language. He went to school and they gave him all this content from Einstein and all these guys. And when he came to Confanochi, they said that he was dancing and something came from air. It's superstition that they told us. So when it came to our heritage, it's superstition. It's witchcraft. It's something else. There is no science. There's no technology. They don't even mention them for you to know. All right? We don't even know who came up with which principle, and it was a Ghanaian or a Nigerian or a Kenyan. Or maybe it was even an African American or something. We don't know. And so you are going through a system that they are giving you an education where 80% of it, of the heroes that they constantly, you may not have thought of them as heroes, but they are heroes. They are people who discovered something. They are people who championed some cause. So by the time that you finish school, they say that come and create something. But you cannot create because you could not relate to any hero. And they have taken the foundation out of you. Now the same people go around and say, we produce all these engineers and they can't produce anything. Because you didn't prepare them fully. So they don't have the confidence to start anything and stay with it for it to become. So they see the problems everywhere, but they don't relate to the problem. Because the foundation is tough. It's not there. It's not there. So they teaching my children go to school and they teach them in English. And teach them in English. Even the Chi, they started to teach them Chi, I think they say it's from primary 4 or something. I had to take a teacher, we had to take a teacher to teach them the Chi. Because they teach them the English there. They come home, you speak the Chi, they look at your face. Now, this is a child that you're educating here, who is going to live in a generation that most of the people living outside Accra will still have to speak their language. How are they going to relate to them to solve the problems? So how do you blend it? Because the foundation is that much important. The cultural identity is that much important. The pride in who they are is so much important. Or by the time they go to university, they can't do anything by themselves. And that's why all the university guys, when they come out, the only thing that they want to do is to look for a job, is to look for help. Because they cannot have the confidence, or they don't have the confidence to relate with all the problems in our society. The problems don't even don't even get their attention. It's a job that they are looking for. Because the content of education that they gave them, all the examples, or a lot of the examples, were coming from England, were coming from America, were coming from Europe, Japan. And they told them all the fantastic things that the Europeans are doing, the Americans are doing, the Japanese are doing, the Chinese are doing. They didn't teach them. Anytime that they will mention any example in Africa, it was a problem. It was a difficulty. It was something that was malfunctional. It was about poverty. So subliminally, we've been conditioned. And we've been conditioned to be dominated. And so we thought that we were free from the slavery, we're free from the colonization, but I think that the colonization is still ongoing. It's still ongoing. It's just that it's not physical. It's through the education. It's through the education. They don't have to tell you to go and queue at American Embassy. You will just go because they put that information there. I don't think it's intentional that somebody really sat down to design that this is what we will leave them. It just happened to be there. And it's working for those who came to colonize us. It's working for their advantage. And you have a lot of the Africans who even continue to debate this. And they try to give us all the examples of why leadership is our problem and then leadership is our challenge. Africa's problem, I dare say, is more than leadership. It's more than leadership because somebody else trained the leader. And that thing that is producing the leader is what we have to look at. Okay? That training, that education, that culture, that religious beliefs that they put in those are the things that are responsible for the kind of leader that you are producing. So it's not necessarily. So look, any African president who has ever done well, go and look at the content, the identity, the cultural importance, and you understand why they were able to do something. Because without the cultural importance, without the identity, without the pride in where they were born, they will never have value for the people. They will never relate with the people. They will only become selfish. They will only become selfish. So I'm talking about the African dilemma, other forms of domination. And we thought that we were free from colonization. That's a lie. And that is a lie, I tell you. See how you defend them and how quick you are to castigate your own people. How quick we are to malign our own people and defend those who even came to colonize. And you see the pride that they have to even tell us that the other day, I think the British leader or something was saying the laws that they came to leave, some of the laws, and so they have to come to correct it. You have to come to Africa to correct it. So we are not wise to correct our own laws after all this war. But at least the Romans left them alone. You know, the Romans left them alone. Why can't they leave Africa alone? Why can't they? And why don't we even have the strength to say that leave us alone? Because they left the system. They left the education. And 80-90% of the content of the education is European. It's European. So the domination continues. Domination continues. And they told us that our culture is what? It's backward. It's backward. So we cannot, you see, once you go through that education and they tell you that your culture is backward, your language is not good. It's not good for technology. Your language is not good for commerce. Your language, how many people speak it? That's what they have told you. Now we have believed it. We have defended it. Now we have defended it. We have believed it. How are you going to make any technology that can change where you come from? Because you are not passionate about them. So the questions, anytime you meet young Africans, we always asking questions, especially those who can think of others. We always asking questions, and we debate, and we are trying to look, where are we wrong? Where are we right? I don't know if one person has the answer. I think the answer can be multifaceted, you know, but a proper understanding of the situation can help you to calm down a little and to stop to blame Africa for everything. We own our part of the bargain. We own our part of the trouble. But if you're an African and you want a balanced education, you need proper sense of the environment. It's not just the anasystem that they tell us. You know, it's also right context. Put a lot of things in the context of the African situation. And that knowledge, they will not put it on CNN. They will not put it on CNBC. They will not put it on BBC. You have to find them yourself. So most part of Africans have been educated without their cultural heritage. You know, they didn't pick that in the education. They didn't. So if you didn't come from the village or from the town and you were not lucky to have grown up in a compound house kind of thing, you are very weak. Very weak. If you just grow up with your mother, father in the city and they never took you to anywhere, you have all kind of excuses, you have all kind of explanations for the complexities of Africa, because there's no identity, there's no foundation, there's no content. So you are the ones always wearing the suit and the tie and defending it and saying that it's the standard. It's the standard, and you're the one quick enough to blame us for all the sloppiness and all the laziness that we seem to have. It's because of the kind of education they gave you. And so the education they gave you is just 90% European. Yet you cannot use it even in Europe. That's the problem. If they train you as a doctor here and you go there, they don't even trust your doctor anyway. So we should break a lot of things to our level. And that is a dilemma. Because some systems are still working for the domination of others over the African. And so the ones who didn't go to school may have that kind of heritage. Because if you're in Kumasi, you can see the pride. He can't read, he can't write, but he's confident in his heritage. I think that component, which should have grown up with the application of history, with technology, would have been a fantastic model for our development. That model where you see somebody who is confident, who is proud of his heritage, and that person was given an education that developed that heritage. That is the way. So the application of the science, the application of the math, the application of the physics, the application of all this, the philosophy, the psychology, was meant to develop that heritage that the man is proud of, so that he could take care of the population, he could take care of the clothes, the housing, the medicine. You develop the technology based on that pride to solve the problems. Then that would have done the magic. I think so. But the moment you cut that man's pride, because you come in with another form of education saying that he is not polished, he's uncouth, he talks anyhow, he's not mannered, he's not well mannered. He doesn't know how to talk well, he doesn't know how to talk like the queen, he doesn't speak good English, so he's not educated. The moment you do that, you cut that man and you start to go from there. But what you forget is that you don't have the foundation. And so your confidence is weak. You don't have any heritage that you can relate to. You don't have any pride. So when you go and they start to tell you, that's why when you go, they tell you, the things that they will show you is what? Slavery, colonization, poverty. And the more they shoot those things on you, it's a breaking process. It's a breaking process. So it gets to a point, you hate your own people. You hate your own heritage. And you are also not accepted anywhere. And then you become an expert. You become you work with the UN. You become a consultant for Africa. You become an African authority. But you don't have the substance, the foundation to help Africa, because the foundation was weak. It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma. It's a complex situation, but it can be done. It can be solved. So if we channel the resources that we have, the time that we have to build ourselves, I don't think that we can erase the colonizers, what the colonizers left. We can't erase the English. We can't even erase all the education. We just have to have a matching one with it. We just have to develop another model, or maybe at the personal level, start to read about that, because that's where you can extract some of the things in there, to customize to your level. Because you will never see any great African who is proud to come to Africa to help Africa develop, who doesn't have that content of pride, of identity. Never. We never have that. The one who thinks that is like an Englishman will never be here. Or when he comes here and there's a problem, you'll be frustrated and move quickly. And so a lot would have to go in. And until it has to do with productivity, service, creation of wealth. Because those are the things that will let you come out of the domination. If you look at African Americans, when we were growing up, the things that we could hear of them The best ones were musicians and then sports. I didn't hear of the creators of businesses. I didn't hear of people producing, creating products, coming up with scientific theories. I didn't hear that. I didn't hear people who were building wealth. The African Americans. I didn't hear that. We heard of what? Michael Jackson. Those who were singing. Unfortunately, that's the same thing that we continue to hear. The sports. Entertainment. That's what that we hear. We're not hearing the ones. That's because the problem of us as a people, whether they are in America or Brazil or in Africa, our problem is not sports. Our problem is not entertainment. But the domination has pushed us into accepting that as our portion. That's the domination. That's what they have done. So the people that we look up to, they are all entertainers. There's nothing wrong with entertainment. But if 90% of your people, the aspiration is to become entertainers and sports people, there's a problem. There's a major problem. Because nobody conquers the world with entertainment. You don't. You don't create the hospitals, you don't create the roads, you don't build the prosperity with entertainment. You don't create the clothes, the phones with that. You create them by people building industries, building products and services, creating wealth. But unfortunately, the black people that they have been around the world, the Africans that they have been around the world, the icons that they want us to look up to, they are what? The entertainers. And it's one of the dominations that they have. So subliminally, you've been dominated. They've been conditioned. So those are the aspirations that our young children even look up to now. The young man in Ghana now, if you ask him any black model, they will tell you what? They will tell you sportsmen. That's all. They will not tell you great business people who have created product, services, some scientist somewhere who's doing a lot. There's a business manager somewhere, some CEO, top CEO somewhere. No. It's false. It's a domination tactics. But you can at least liberate yourself to study beyond that. To study beyond that. Now, we have a lot of these Africans with 90% European content schooled in Africa who continue on to defend this kind of analogies and continue to blame the African leadership. They continue to blame the African leadership. They continue to blame the African leadership. The real fact is that it's not so much the leadership, but there are the things that produce that leader. The things that produce that leader. And what are they? The content of education that they had. The heroes that they had to look up to. Who were they? They were Bob Marley. And, But when it came to them, they will tell you about what? Their philosophers. They will tell you about Einstein. They will tell you about Archimedes. They will tell you about all these great business people. And when it comes to you, they are giving you examples of sportsmen and women, entertainers, singers. It's a domination tactics. It's a domination tactics. And then when it comes, they would want to tell you, Africa's problem is a leadership problem. If you have identified it as a leadership problem, why is it all this while that we have not solved it? But at least we have identified it as a leadership problem. So if it's really a leadership problem, why have we not solved it? It is more than leadership problem. There's something. The process that is producing these leaders is where the problem is. And they've been dominated. They've been dominated. And so when you look at where the Africans spend their time, majority of us will spend our time and our resources in getting degrees, and then looking for jobs. And then a lot of the other ones, the religious ones, will go to church. That's all. And then some other people will follow politics. Now look at where Africa has challenges. Houses to live in, better hospitals, good roads, children to be educated and clothed, food, drugs, technology, data. That is where the strength should be. That is where the focus should be. That is where the energy should be. That's where the time should be spent. That's not where the time is being spent, because there is domination. So our attention is, so virtually we like a colony, so to say. Because if you look at those who were colonized, they didn't worry so much because somebody else was managing their affairs. So they go to farm, they come to work, they go and play music and sleep. And the problem was still there. So they were not developing anything. They were not creating wealth. So the African domination. And so you see the average African now, fantastic. They are looking for school to go everywhere in the world. You go to Asia, they are there. Now it's Ukraine and China. They have first degree here. They want to go and become doctor, there, lawyer, there, engineer, there. By the time they come back, they can't even start anything with that kind of education. They only have to look for a job. It's amazing. All the guys that we sent to Cuba, where are they? What are they doing? The ones that we sent to Russia, when they came back, what did they do? What did they start? Where are the businesses that they built? I may be ignorant. Those who went to Harvard and Yale and all these universities, when they came back, if they came back at all, or wherever they are, what businesses have they created? What products have they built? Where are the creations? What is the productivity? I can say the majority of them were just looking for the best form of the training that they have given us is for us to just manage. We are not the originators. We are not the promoters. We are not the trailblazers, because the substance, the foundation was cut. So he sent the son to Russia. He came back. He's looking for government work. Majority of them. Nobody is trying to start anything, to develop anything. Nothing. He's looking for a job, or he's looking for government work, or becoming a politician, becoming a lecturer. That's it. So the place that we need about 80% of the forces to go to solve problems, build infrastructure, build systems and structure, build businesses, build industries. Once they get the degree, that's not the place they ever look at. Doesn't that tell you something about the content of the education? They've been dominated. They live under the domination. It's because they were educated without their identity. They were given information without their pride, without their heritage. And nobody who is educated that way can create anything. Because he didn't have the foundation. You didn't have the foundation. You didn't have the pride. Because when you start to build something, it becomes so tough and so difficult that without your identity, without your pride, without the heroes that you can look up to who like you give up. You give up. And so when they take the heroes, when they take their identity from you, and they give you all this kind of education, you only look to become a manager, to handle something that has been created by them. Or you become an entertainer. It's a dilemma. And so I am of the thinking that the guy in Kumasi who is well built up in the culture, you find a way of polishing that one with science, with technology, with physics, with chemistry, with engineering. He still has that confidence. So when you give him those tools, you build something. Because his pride will be intact. He will never feel inferior to another man. He doesn't have it. It's not in his mind. Those are the people that you build. So that is it. But if you leave that side and you come to the one who was given proper education, speaking the Queen's English without a foundation, that one, you go, he can't do anything. He can't do anything. He can't do anything. He can't do much to change the narratives of Africa. And now we are producing a lot of them like that, you see? And we are sending them to Ukraine, to Russia, to America, to Australia, they are all everywhere. Say that they are looking for greener pastures. There is no greener pastures anywhere more than Africa. But ill equipment, they are ill equipped. They lack the confidence to stay with the process to produce something. Or they lack the information. They lack the knowledge. So they've been given information that they cannot use to solve something here. And they are the ones constantly complaining about Africa's predicament. He's a doctor, he's practicing, but he feels frustrated. He's a lawyer, he doesn't like the system, but he doesn't dare to challenge the system. Because he's afraid. No confidence, no identity, no pride, no foundation. He's a teacher. He looks at the system, he's not happy with it, but he dares questions it, question it. Why? Because he's not been given the foundation right. So for me, if you're training your child here, teach your child the heritage. Teach them the language, teach them the culture. It will do more than the physics and the chemistry that they are giving to stabilize them. And don't tell me that you fill that one with Jesus knowledge, because the religious one. I remember my auntie the other time, she asked me, so why didn't you give your children English name? I said, but they are not English. I said, okay, but how about the names in the Bible? I said, no, I don't want the names in the Bible. Is it wrong to name your child what name that you want to name them if it is not in the Bible? And who told us that the names in the Bible are Christians, or every name in the Bible is a Christian name? Some of them are Jewish names, some of them are different kind of names. So it does not really mean that it comes from the Bible, so it's good. Because one of the things that they have also used to dominate that is that religious component. Okay, so instead of you getting the average Jewish man has a fair idea of his heritage. That's why they are strong people. You can't just push them like that. You see the way they teach them? They are buoyant. You see the way they come up with businesses and create wealth? Because until the people have strong identity and proud of their heritage, they cannot create prosperity. Okay? They can't create prosperity. So if somebody wants to dominate you, he'll take that heritage from you, take that identity from you, and fill it with something else. What do you think they did to our brothers and sisters they took to the new land? What do you think they did to them? They took the identity from them. They took their heritage from them so that they could dominate them for a very long time. They separated them from their names, their culture, their food. It's a strategy. So you are here, and you say that you don't want that. You're just going to produce children who will become doctors, lawyers, professors, but who will not be relevant that much. They will never be able to challenge the system because there's no confidence. And that confidence is not the one, I'm not talking about the Bible one. Talking of the one that comes out of your pride of who you are as an African. So you never feel inferior. You never feel like another man is better than you. You don't hate anybody, but you can handle the hatred of others. Okay, because every time that they're giving examples, the kind of examples they give on us is what? Today I was watching a program. The guy was talking about success and wealth and everything. And he kept on, about 4 times, he kept on saying, not some people suffering in Zimbabwe. He was talking about something like that, and he mentioned that, or in Africa. It's a nice program that I'm listening, but I got pissed off. Why? And then when he gives another example with technology, he mentions another country outside of Africa. But when it comes to prosperity and when it comes to poverty and something which is denigrating, they mention Africa. You see, it's a sub training. They are not even conscious that they are affecting our image. And a lot of Africans will just watch and say, oh, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. And yet you are wondering why Africa is to where we are. Because you cannot change that which is not here. You can't change something physical if it's not changing your mind. It's not changing your mind. And so the kind of education that they are giving us in Africa is just a domination education. It's not that much. And it doesn't really matter whether you went to school in any of the so-called Ivy League or top universities. It doesn't matter. If you're an African and you don't have the identity set, all those kind of education are useless. I'm telling you. Because you only look for a system that is set to follow. You will never challenge anything. You will never disagree with anything. You defend. Because your foundation is not there. It's a dilemma. So I would rather go for the one that they're speaking, that they are proud. You can feel it. Yes, there is a lot of modernization. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of things that we have to add. But that will be the ones that we have created. That will be the ones that at least we have adapted. So that's why if you look at it, the cultures that are evil, that are very proud of their heritage, they are the ones who take care of themselves. They are the ones who are very proud to create something. They are the ones who cannot crush them. They are the ones when the people came, they fought back because they are people who are confident. And if anybody takes your confidence from you, they can dominate you. So you don't have to finish university and your confidence is all gone. or you exhibit some kind of confidence but it's shallow. There's no substance beneath it. You know. So my name is Obendako. I try to talk about I think it doesn't have to be a controversial topic. It's not controversial. I think the African dilemma, other forms of domination, and I think that the kind of education that they have given us is dominating us. So you have to self-educate and build the foundation and be proud of your heritage. If you can do that, then you can balance the kind of education that they have given you. Some people are here sending their children to American university in Ghana, American school in Ghana, and you think that you're giving them education, they will never be able to create anything by themselves unless they are white. Okay, if they give them that kind of education, yes, it works for them. But you as an African, there's a lot of impediments that you need your identity to overcome and to keep your peace. Because the world does not see the African as the full human. You can debate it. I may be wrong, I may be backward, I may be biased. Maybe, I hope it's right. If I'm biased, it's fantastic. But from the little information that I have, you need a lot of your identity intact and a lot of your heritage intact. That's how you can help your people to develop. That's how you can help Africa to develop. So the African challenge is not just only about leadership. It's about the processes that are producing the leaders. The education, the culture, the religion, a lot of things. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you.